Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to call this meeting of the Peace River Manasota Water Supply Authority to order December 4th, 2019 at the Manatee County Administration Center. If we would at this time, let's rise for the invocation and the pledge, please. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you for a wonderful day, Lord. We just thank you for being able to be here today and do the business that we need to do. We thank you for all that you do for us, Lord. We ask that you give us wisdom and guidance so we can make decisions that would be the best for this authority. And we thank you for our men and women, Lord, that protect us at home and abroad. And we just ask that you keep your hand of protection upon them as they do their best to protect us. We ask all these things now in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Let's see. Morning. Before we get our host remarks, I'd like to make an agenda change to have the election of officers at the end of this meeting today to elect our new chair and vice chair. Is that?
That's fine.
All right. Okay. All right. With that, do we have to have a motion and we have to? No, we're good to go. Okay. We got a consensus of the board.
You wait until the end of the meeting?
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fine.
End of the meeting. Yep. Okay. That way I don't get off the hook for being late. I apologize for being late. I was late in the name of progress. We're trying to make the roads safer and better so you can get places quicker, but you have to pay the price to get there. But anyway, Karen Stewart, our Deputy County Administrator for Manatee County, our opening comments.
Yes, good morning, everyone. I bring you greetings from our County Administrator, Sherry Corrier. She couldn't be here this morning because she's meeting with our leadership team over at the Convention Center. But I do want to welcome you to Manatee County and to the recently dedicated Patricia M. Glass Chambers. I heard from Terry just a few minutes ago that Commissioner Glass was very instrumental in the Regional Water Supply Authority. And so welcome to her dedicated chambers. We appreciate you being here. I also want to recognize our Manatee County Water Management Leadership, Mark and Katie, who are in the audience and also absent from the leadership team. I think Sherry mentioned to you that prior to being the Deputy County Administrator, which I'm new at that, it's only been a few months that I've been confirmed. So we have our new administrator, 2 new deputies, and we are very excited about the new year to come. I also wanted to let you know that you're in, beautiful downtown Bradenton, which has experienced kind of a renaissance over the last few years. We have our River Walk, and this weekend we'll be hosting one of the most popular blues festivals in the nation over on the River Walk. And there are plenty of restaurants and fun things to do down here. We have our newly designed Bishop Museum. There's the new Chamber of Commerce building, which will have some retail in it in the future. Our brand new Spring Hill Suites, our libraries downtown. So you all are in a happening place this morning. I also want to thank you for your dedication to the regional water supply, so important to our area and really a focus now. I heard the legislative delegation speak yesterday about water quality and the water supply, and this is just one of the most important aspects of our state and our community. It really serves the citizens of Manatee County, our quality life, and promotes economic development. So thank you very much. I hope you have a great meeting. I wish you the very best during the holidays and a Happy New Year. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Karen. Public comments? Anybody in the public wish to address the board at this time? Okay, seeing none. Resolutions. Number 1, Lakewood Ranch Administrative Building Dedication. When the authority first organized 4 decades ago, Manatee County graciously provided the Q House at Lake Manatee at the headquarters for the administration. As we grew over time, the headquarters was moved to various rental office spaces to better accommodate the increasing needs of the authority. Finally landing at the current location in Lakewood Ranch 5 years ago, this location has proven to provide easy access to the member counties and Southwest Florida Water Management District offices and to firms and agencies and management deals with including financial institutions and consultants. When the opportunity arose late last year to purchase the building, I'm proud to say that this board evaluated the cost benefits and completed the closing in February. Ownership of the building provides stability for staff, efficiency and effective management, and saving to our rate payers, no longer tossing rent money down the drain. It's great to circle back to Manatee County where it all began. Mr. Lehman has advised me that the door is always open with coffee, donuts, and morning paper for anyone who wants to come visit. Any of the board members like to say anything?
Well, I will, yeah, I think that it was smart of our staff to come up with a mission where we actually save money, quite a bit of money every month and cumulatively at the end of the year. And then our staff reorganized the inside and completely dressed up the outside. And we have, if I say, I'm sure downtown Bradenton is having its resurgence, but I believe that we have the most beautiful building in all of Manatee County.
All right. None of the board members had any comments. I would like for the board members and Ms. Terry Bailey, our Vice President of the Manatee Chamber of Commerce, to join us at the podium.
Down there, I guess.
It said podium. Want us in the front?
Yep. Congratulations. Yeah, you too.
Terry, do you want to say anything?
Sure. Good morning. I'm Terry Bailey, Vice President of Workforce and Community Development with the Manatee Chamber of Commerce. On behalf of the Chamber and our 2,000 members, we welcome you to be permanent residents in Manatee County. As you heard earlier from Karen, water is very important and crucial, and we applaud the authority for your dedication on regionalism and keeping the water supply going for this ever-growing area. So congratulations.
Snuggle up to somebody. Get over closer to the picture there.
We put this one, hold the picture in front of us?
There they are. We'll do it all kinds of ways.
We've got options.
There we go.
I'm in a tree.
Is it low?
Probably not.
Commissioner, trace your corner up just a little. There we go.
You're the engineer, you tell me. I'm a farmer, water runs downhill.
That's a primer. Pat, may I get one with you and the board members as well?
We'll get all kinds of
Like this. Perfect. Great, thank you.
Oh, chair.
Chair.
Okay, next is our Certificate of Achievement of Excellence in Financial Reporting awarded by the Government Financial Officers Association. Pat?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the Government Finance Officers Association, known as GFOA, too many acronyms in the world, has established the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting Program to encourage and assist state and local governments to go beyond the minimum requirements of generally accepted principles to preserve comprehensive annual reports that evidence the spirit of transparency and full disclosure, and then to recognize individual governments that succeed in achieving these goals. I'm proud to say that for 2019, the authority was awarded the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting by the GFOA for its comprehensive annual report. The Certificate of Achievement is the highest form of recognition in the area of governmental accounting and financial reporting, and its attainment represents a significant accomplishment by a government and its management that receives it. So I'm proud to say that the award was put together by Miss Ann Lee, and she also got a financial reporting achievement specifically awarded to her for the CAFR. So if you would all please join me in congratulating Miss Lee for all her hard work. And now we have financial awards that go with all the operation and management awards that the staff has accumulated over all these years. So, Ann, congratulations.
We keep winning all these awards, we're gonna have to expand that new building we just got. Okay, consent agenda.
Structural failure, Mr.
good.
Lehman.
It lasted for the pictures.
All right, consent agenda, one more time.
Nothing to pull from me, sir.
Okay,
I
nothing.
move we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, have a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Agenda item number 1, water supply conditions report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, board members. Richard Anderson of your staff. Mike, I need a little help on this. Is it? I'm not seeing it here.
Here we go.
There you go.
There we go. First slide. There we go. Good morning again, Richard Anderson of your staff. This is the water supply conditions report, as usual, information item only. First up, rainfall. If you recall, in September, we had a very dry September, but we bounced back nicely in October and November, and we had over 5.5 inches of rain in the basin, which really bolstered our flows in the river and has allowed us, has allowed us to keep taking water even through today, as you'll see in just a minute. The river flows right now are running right about average where they should be for this time of year. We're at about 580 CFS in the river. As you can see by the blue dotted line is our average for the month. The green is the actual, so we're just a hair above where we should be on the annual average. So we're right at 580 CFS. As far as river withdrawals, this is the time of year that we're kind of in a maintenance mode. We're taking out basically what we use between supply and recharging the ASR system. For October, we averaged about 37.7 MGD withdrawals. November, because of the rainfall and the increased flow in the river, we were able to take a little bit more, about 52.5 MGD, and wound up the end of the month at right about 46 MGD through November 30th. For surface water storage, as you can imagine, we're full, completely full this time of year. We have 6.7 billion gallons in the surface water system combined between reservoirs 1 and 2. So we're in excellent shape as we roll into the dry season here after New Year's. The ASR storage system, we just are coming out of our recharge season right now. We just recharged from about August 1st through the end of November, recharged about 940 billion gallons into that system. We have about 8.3 billion gallons in the system. The usable quantity of that is just over 5 billion. This is the first time we've crossed over 5 billion in usable storage in the ASR system. We're sitting at about 5.1 billion of usable supply. And then for estimated days of supply, this is the total for the ASR usable quantity of 5 billion plus the surface water storage. The blue, as I've showed you before, we have about 459 days of storage at our average delivery of 25.5 MGD. If we needed to deliver our contract amount of 34.7, we still have 340 days of supply, which is about 11 months of supply at our contract rate. So excellent shape as far as water supply goes. This is the time of year that we do an annual update. Usually I show you the monthly totals for all of the customers. What I'm going to show you today is the annual wrap-up from the fiscal year 2019. So as you can see here, the authority for 2019, we delivered on average throughout the year 25.57 MGD. Your county and city facilities delivered just under 46 million gallons, 45.8, for a total of 71.4 regionally. Of that, as usual, about 3.7 was delivered by Manatee County to their consecutive customers. So the total used by the authority and our customers was 67.7 for the year, for the fiscal year 2019. Looking at it on a monthly basis, you can kind of see the annual diurnal, the change month to month. The green shows the authority's deliveries, and the blue shows your monthly deliveries to your systems. The authority ranged from about 22.5 MGD as a low here in October of 18 to a high of almost 30 MGD in March. Your customer systems range from about 39.9, 40 MGD to just over 50 MGD in June. So just give you a flavor of the range of flows we deliver throughout the year. 76 was the high for March, April, May. The low for the year was in August of 64 MGD. So, and now to show you your individual county and city usages. This is Charlotte County. For the water year, you used 10.26 from the authority, 440,000 from your burnt store facility. Total used was 10.7, which is about 56% of your total capacity available. For DeSoto County, DeSoto used 0.59 MGD from the authority, produced another 320,000 for a total of 0.91 MGD, which is about 64% of your capacity allocations. And for Manatee County, you self-supplied to your customers 32.7, exported another 4.5 MGD to Sarasota County, and again, as I mentioned, 3.7 to your consecutive customers downstream, for a total of almost 41 MGD for the year, which is 79% of your available capacity. And for Sarasota County took 12.7 from the authority, imported another 4.5 MGD. You self-supplied 2.7 for a total of exactly 20 MGD for the year 2019. That's 60% of your available capacity. And City of Northport utilized 2 MGD from the authority, another 1.4 from your facilities. Small amount of water exchanged between Sarasota County and Northport, 20,000 a day, for a total of 3.4, which is 55% of your available supplies. And then overall, the total regional demand, as you can see, 71.4 MGD total used throughout the region. If you average that over the last 9-year period, that is an average increase in water use of 1.63 MGD, or 1.63% per year. And again, the usual utilization slide. For the year, we utilized 71.4, 33.3 available. Total utilized was about 68%, about 2/3 of our available supply is what we're using today. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Fellow board members, you have any questions?
Excellent report.
Okay. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
Okay, and this item, agenda item number 1 was for information only, no action required. So now we'll go to regular agenda item number 2. Mr. Coates, are you up?
He's playing technician.
Okay, couldn't see him back there.
That's a good thing.
Mr. Chair, board members, Mike Coates of your staff. Regular item 2 is the proposed second amendment to the Water Systems Interconnect and Water Transfer Contract between the authority and the City of Punta Gorda. We will be requesting board action on this. The contract we're talking about today pertains to these 2 pipeline facilities. Phase 1A pipeline, which is existing, completed in 2012, 24-inch line that goes from essentially Kings Highway down and across the Peace River and connects with the City of Punta Gorda's system in the little burg of Cleveland on US 17. We have a pumping station there where it connects. There are also points of connection with Charlotte County off of this Phase 1A line. We have four connections that serve Charlotte County off of this line, and then one, of course, that serves the City of Punta Gorda. The contract also pertains to the new line that we're putting in here. This is the Phase 1 pipeline that's going down US 17 and will connect up with the Shell Creek Water Treatment Plant owned by the City of Punta Gorda. That project is scheduled to be in service in 2020, and we will talk about why it's important to change this contract to help with that project as well. The contract that we're talking about was initially established for the Phase 1A pipeline facilities in 2013. These facilities were completed in the fall of 2012, which is fiscal 2013. It went in service. The contract was amended in 2016 to include the Phase 1 facilities, which we just talked about. Now, this contract establishes ownership, it establishes O&M responsibilities, it sets out coordination goals, and it also establishes a seasonal exchange of water that's really intended to net zero at the end of each fiscal year. And then the seasonal water exchange keeps this pipeline fresh and ready for service at all times. So if the authority has an emergency, we can get water from Punta Gorda and we don't have to flush a bunch of water to clear the pipeline. Same thing on the other side. If Punta Gorda has an emergency, we can send them water. We don't have to flush and clear that pipeline. So that seasonal exchange of water is really the focus of the change that we're proposing in this contract. There are also provisions in the contract for the purchase of water. If we identify that the region needs 1 million gallons a day and Punta Gorda has 1 million gallons a day to sell, we work that out in the springtime and we implement that the next fiscal year. So there are separate provisions for water purchase that are not really associated with this seasonal exchange. Hopefully this slide shows up better on your viewer than on mine, but let me walk through this. This is the seasonal exchange of water, the total volume of water exchanged each year since 2013. And the blue lines represent the water that Punta Gorda supplied to the region, and the red lines represent the water that the region supplied to Punta Gorda. The green bars in here represent the difference at the end of that fiscal year and who that difference is owed to. So, for example, in 2013, Punta Gorda sent us about 24 million gallons more than we sent them. The next year we whittled that down and so on. So this has worked pretty well through the years that we've had it going until 2019. And in 2019, for a number of reasons, including some seasonal issues with water quality in the Punta Gorda source water, and the fact that they're hooking up facilities with their RO plant that they're building out at the Shell Creek plant. The city took they ended up with about a 65 million gallon that they owed the region at the end of 2019. Now, the contract allows up to 30 million gallons to be owed at the end of each fiscal year. So this was an exceedance of what the contract says. What we're proposing to do to reconcile this is to change the agreement. And effective 2019, we would increase the allowable carryover from 30 million to 60 million gallons, and also change the language in the contract to ensure that any imbalance is made up on a mutually agreeable schedule. We don't want all that water coming back to us at one time, and I'm sure they don't want all that water coming back to them at one time. So we want to just make sure that we're coordinating on that. So why change this? First of all, what we've seen is that the operation of 30 million gallon carryover doesn't really provide us with adequate operational flexibility. And this last year showed us that. Punta Gorda had some seasonal issues, they had some connection issues, and they weren't able to meet that. And the whole idea is that this needs to work in both of our favors. We need to exchange water to keep this thing working, and 30 million gallons didn't get it. That's one of the reasons. Secondly, the Phase 1 pipeline is scheduled to be complete in 2020. We will then have two connections with Punta Gorda. That Phase 1 connection is a plant-to-plant connection. The Phase 1A connection is a connection to Punta Gorda's distribution system. That's going to complicate things. We're going to need some additional flexibility as we go forward on this. So it does improve our flexibility to increase this carryover, and it allows us to just better manage unexpected circumstances out here. So what you have in your board agenda is the second amendment to the Water Systems Interconnect and Water Transfer Contract between the authority and Punta Gorda, and we would recommend that you approve that second amendment.
Okay. Board members, you have any questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I move approval of regular agenda item number 2 as recommended by staff.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yeah, if I may, motion maker, do you have any?
Okay. Well, Commissioner Trace was
I
first.
just asked Doug, I assume you've looked at the contracts and.
Yes, I did.
And-
Mike said technically he wrote it, and he did draft it, but we went back through it and reviewed it for its efficiency, and it meets the intent of the original contract as well. We're not diverting from that at all. We're just like looking in the future, now have a second pipeline connected. It's going to take more water, and we need more flexibility. So I agreed with the contract, and we also approved how it was written and made some minor changes.
Thank you.
Commissioner Mayo?
Yeah, I think this, just a quick minute here, I think this really demonstrates the cooperation between the counties and the cities inside of it, and this doesn't always happen so easily and fluidly when governments deal with each other, but this is the very essence of this authority, and this is just great.
Commissioner Daughter? You have anything?
Nothing else, sir. That's the motion.
All right. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 3. Ms. Terry?
That was quick.
Yes.
Yep.
Are you moving that mouse up there?
No.
Okay. All right. It's being unruly. Okay.
I can't drive.
Okay.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Terry Holcomb with the authority staff. This item is for informational purposes only. No action is requested of the board. At this time, I'd like to also introduce my co-presenter today, Mr. Ryan Messer. Ryan's a professional engineer in Florida. He's a project manager with HDR, who is our consultant for the Integrated Regional Water Supply Plan. Just a quick overview of the agenda this morning. I'm going to run through the purpose of the Integrated Regional Water Supply Plan, cover some of the key elements of it, and then I'll turn it over to Mr. Messer, who will walk you through some of those key elements and our findings to date. So the Integrated Regional Water Supply Plan is a roadmap that has guided the Authority Board and staff on future infrastructure water supply planning projects since 2006, when the original Integrated Water Supply Plan was developed. Now, if you remember from the previous board meeting, we kind of gave a little update on the timing of these updates to the Integrated Regional Water Supply Plan and why they occur when they do, so that we can help inform the water management districts with their regional water supply plans. So in the Southern Planning Region, the Water Management District is currently working on their 2020 update, and that's anticipated to be finished in late 2020. So our update is then occurring at the same time so that we can inform that plan. In addition, the plan ensures that we've got coordination and consistency with regulatory planning documents, not just the regional water supply plan, but also guidelines with respect to the southern water use caution areas, saltwater intrusion minimum aquifer level guidelines, and minimum flows and levels for surface waters. Probably most importantly, the plan helps to promote cooperation and collaboration with the authority's customers, our regulatory agencies, as well as other regional partners, so that we're sure that we're all working together to efficiently manage and protect our water resources in the region. So looking at the key elements, you're going to look at like items 2 through 7 here. Item 2, the regional facilities update. It's a snapshot. What do we have currently in the region available for water supply? What's permitted? Then you look at the demand projections, and we look out 20 years as well as 50 years in this plan. We're going to do some long-range planning. The regional sources, item number 4, identifies opportunities for sources in our region to meet those demands identified in the demand projections. And then the regional transmission system evaluations looks at the ability to get those sources to where those demands are occurring hydraulically. Could we have the capacity in the regional system to get it there? Section 6 covers the water conservation and demand management. How are our partners in the region managing those water resources through conservation efforts? And then they roll up into a capital improvement plan where we identify the sources and the timing of those sources to come online over the next 20 years. So having said that, I'd like to turn it over to Ryan to cover those key elements and give us a status update.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here. My name is Ryan Messer. I am a professional engineer, and I'm a consultant on behalf of your staff, and I represent HDR. I do have to apologize. I missed the memo on the Christmas tie, so I'll do better next time. For this Integrated Regional Water Supply Plan, I'll start to refer to it as the 2020 plan, just for shortness. At the very beginning of this plan, it's most important to establish the baseline for how much water supply do you need in the region? What do you need your regional transmission system to look like in order to fill out the demands into the future, be it 2020 out to 2070? So here's how we come to those conclusions for our baseline. For the authority's growth, we're referring here to the authority's customers, and you see them in the table here for Manatee County, Sarasota County, Charlotte County, DeSoto County, and the city of Northport. Roll those up with the water treatment plants that we have out in our interconnected area, and we get to a finished water capacity of 103.5 million gallons a day. That's an annual average daily flow capacity. These are assessed based on the water use permits that are already secured and installed water treatment facilities with their own efficiencies that are inherent and understood. Now we have our baseline on what's inputs to the system. Now we assess what are outputs of the system. Representing the corresponding municipalities for the authority's customers and their finished water requirements, we we employed 7 different demand projection methodologies to come up with a most probable median projection that you see in the orange coloring on the chart. On top of that, in order for planning, the authority has a best management practice that's referred to as the 17% capacity standard. That employs a 6% rotational reserve capacity that you want for operational flexibility. And on top of that, the authority has a policy that new infrastructure needs to come online when 90% of the capacity in the system is exceeded by the demands. So we roll those up into an additive of the 17% capacity standard, that's the blue, on top of the orange line here, and that establishes our flow rates out from 2020, which is a little over 80 million gallons a day, out to 2070, which exceeds 180 million gallons a day. And as comparing to the installed finished water capacities with the region, we find that the region needs new capacity by 2030. Out to 2070, we need as much as 86 million gallons a day on an annual average day basis. So how are we going to get there? Next up, we talk about the water treatment development options that are able to secure that 86 million gallons a day. These water supply development options are all not brand new. They've been carried over, progressed through with water supply plans in the past and sometimes recent concepts. But we do also have some new concepts that are brought forth within this plan. We sum those up to 13 different water sources with a potential yield of 137.5 million gallons a day. And you see spatially, they're diverse. They also, with respect to water sources, are diverse. You have potentials for expansion of brackish groundwater supplies, a potential small amount of potential freshwater supplies, and then enlarging surface water reliance, and then also potentially needing to incorporate high salinity desalination, be it seawater or very salty groundwater closer to the coast. With this chart we have, or with this slide, we have 2 pie charts. On the left, we have the roll-up of that 103.5 million gallons a day that's currently installed. And you can see it's pretty heavily reliant on surface water treatment as the source. And we're taking a look at, on the right, 137.5 MGD of the potential pool of new source capacities that we've identified. And you can see that we're still looking predominantly with respect to needing surface water treatment, but then as we grow into 2070, we're going to really strongly need to start looking at high salinity desalination. We can look for examples up from our neighbors in Tampa Bay Water District or elsewhere within the country and the world. But it's assuring we do have more than enough potential supply to meet needs through 2070. So now we want to talk about how we can give those water quantities out to the region in a sustainable manner. The authority has, for the first time, a regional transmission system model. We refer to it as a master model. It's a hydraulic model that has been built based on 9 independent, smaller, localized utility models among 5 different software programs. We rolled the best and brightest of all of that together, made sure that there wasn't redundant infrastructure, and we utilized that now for continual planning for the authority. That model, all of the piping networks are shown in the figure on the right across the system. We're utilizing this regional model to evaluate future improvements for various conditions. We want to initially look at the health of the 2020 contract allocations, and then we look for 2040 growth supply capacity needs, how that may be different from the authority's current plan, and then we do a validation on the usability, sustainability of the pipelines that are currently installed in the system and then planned to be installed in the system out to 2070 so that you don't shorten the lives of those assets. Then we also utilize the model to identify the ability to wheel water around should an emergency scenario happen, should the Peace River facility go offline or the Lake Manatee water treatment plant to go offline, where are those flows going to go and how can you help to get them there? So out of these model simulations, we come to these very summarized and simplistic findings. For 2020, we note no major issues, so the system as it stands now is of good health. For 2040, we note that as new flows are coming online and new demand growth areas are changing over time, what's currently planned in the authority CIP may need to be expanded in order to help with flows that are growing with respect to Manatee County and Sarasota County along the Phase 3 corridor. And for 2070, we note that with those proposed and planned future pipelines to be considered for installation by 2040, those pipelines are not going to have any hydraulic restrictions or major shortfalls out to 2070. So we know if we install new pipelines now, we're going to be okay out into the future. And then we're utilizing the emergency scenario runs for those short-term, less than 10-day issue time periods to inform the urgency of future water sources to come online and water transmission mains to be implemented so that we have a more resilient region as a whole. So with all those modeling efforts, we know it's inherent. The regional transmission system connectivity, it builds resiliency. You can rely on your neighbors to pull water around. With respect to the Phase 2 lines, we know that Phase 2B can support the expansion into Charlotte County. Charlotte County is right now doing their own individual potable water system master plan, and we're recommending that the authority wait on that master plan to finish so that we can better cooperate in alignment of Phase 2B and where the water drop-offs would be. Phase 2C would help complete that circuit such that it would connect the Peace River facility to the Carlton plant as a backup for one of the main arteries of water supply, which is the 42-inch North Regional Transmission main that's in the middle of that green highlighted area. And also, this line could actually send flow from Carlton down into Charlotte County and Northport in those times of needs as well. So we're recommending there to keep an eye on near-term evaluations for implementing those pipelines. Phase 2D, it supports the authority's vision of being an interconnected regional system. This is to help pull in connection of Inglewood Water District to the region, and it would help in the case of the Inglewood Water Treatment Plant should it go offline. In the longer term, that service area would need those flows. So we're wanting to keep an eye on that one a little longer term out towards 2040. With respect to Phase 3, the corridor, as you guys know, Phase 3B has been, it's under construction. It's very soon to come completely online. In extending the authority's current plan of Phase 3C up to Manatee County, we have proposed in here a Phase 3C extension that you see within the green surface area. That's not within the CIP right now. What these pipelines would do is support under normal conditions Manatee County's future demands and also help Sarasota County's pressures in the north part of the system. And that can come heavily into play when the University Parkway Water Treatment Plant comes offline, if it does. So this model is able to help really accommodate addressing those issues. And also, these two lines together can provide a significant portion of Manatee County's emergency needs should the Lake Manatee Water Treatment Plant come offline. So we are recommending a near-term feasibility and a routing study for those. And Phase 4 is another one similar to Phase 2D to interconnect the entire system. This one would pull Phase 1A piping down into the Burnt Store service area to the south. And it provides that inherent resilient benefit to connect the Burnt Store system to the region. And it also can provide that backup if the Burnt Store facility goes offline, and potentially could provide excess capacity sharing of that, kind of like Punta Gorda's Shell Creek water plant. So we're recommending keeping an eye on that one longer term, similar to Phase 2D as well. So that's a snapshot on what we've done so far with the integrated plan, and now we'll walk you through remaining items. We've done the meat of analyses, and now we're working through recommendations that will quickly turn around to the authority for review and roll that into a full-blown 2020 plan that's in draft mode to be submitted to the authority in January. There will be a comment period for that that the authority will handle, and then we'll roll into a final regional water supply plan in March 2020, and then come back to the board for a final presentation. I'm going to turn it back over to Terry for final slides.
So key takeaways from the presentation today. The region will need additional capacity coming online by 2030. And then looking long-term, we're looking at about 86 million gallons per day over the next 50 years in the region. So the good news, we've got all the potential projects out there to meet all those needs out until 2070, but we need to make sure we keep in front of us the regulatory considerations with respect to evolving minimum flows and levels on our surface waters, as well as any SWACA requirements for any new groundwater development. So the future regional transmission system, those pipelines that were discussed that are proposed, there's about 70 miles. It's almost doubling the system as it stands today, with 24 to 48-inch diameter lines proposed. We did see that all of the current planned pipelines that are proposed are sized currently to accommodate hydraulically those 2070 flows. As well as some of the proposed lines will help alleviate some of the the hydraulic pressure requirements in the distribution systems in the northern part of Sarasota County, as well as provide benefits to Manatee County for flows in the future, as well as emergency conditions. Longer-term pipeline routing, we know that Charlotte County is working on their master plan as we right now, and should be finished, or at least in preparation, I believe, in 2020. Sarasota County is working on updating their modeling efforts as well. So the longer-term pipeline routing projects down to Burnt Store in Charlotte County, as well as Englewood Water District, those will be based on the demand projections that respective counties determine. And then the regional transmission system interconnectivity provides resiliency. I think we all recognize the benefits of having an interconnected system for emergency purposes. It provides backup to those major infrastructure centers in our region, and it also supports distribution pressures within our customers' individual systems, and provides excess capacity sharing, similar to what we just heard for the Punta Gorda system. So all great news, and if you have any questions, we'd be glad to answer them now, and we thank you for your time.
Board members, Commissioner Mayo.
Yeah, I think you covered it, but first of all the pipes we've recently put in are sized with a look to the future.
Correct.
Number two, all the future pipes, you're also going to look as best you can that, and I know most of it goes into existing right-of-ways, but that we know the projected paths and are looking to make sure we have the ability to install the pipes in the future. Is that part?
The feasibility planning for each of these pipelines obviously will occur after this broad look at them. That's the recommendations on some of the near-term pipelines that you move forward with a feasibility and routing study to ensure that if you need land acquisition for installation of those pipelines, you identify that early. Obviously, at this level, we don't have the exact corridors, but we do have the routing following arterial, lines or power lines, things that make sense within the model. So hydraulically, they're there.
And I'm familiar with that. My one fear is when we go to put a pipe in, 10 years from now, someone's built a big housing development or a big distribution center right square in the path. So the sooner we can identify it, the better. And I know you know that too.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else?
Just a comment, I guess, and thinking long-term, super long-term, looking at water supply and options for water supply, and I saw you had desal on there, and obviously that's almost basically unlimited source. I'm hoping that we're going to keep track of the dialogue going on with the regulatory agencies relative to potable reuse.
Yes, and I will let Mr. Messer answer that. We do have a section in the report that covers that.
Because, although it's probably objectionable to most people right now. Eventually, that will be a legitimate source once treatment facilities, water reclamation facilities get up to speed. We're redoing some of our stuff out at the Eastport plant here in the near future. It'd be interesting for the authority to keep up to date, I think, on all of the water reclamation facilities within our domain and see how they're doing, when they plan to do upgrades, and making sure that concurrently that the regulations come into place where the level of treatment gets defined, as opposed to throwing it in the deep well injection, just wasting it away. If we could put it in ASR someday, it'd be kind of neat. So I'm just super long range because I know we don't have even the regs in place now to even really talk about it. But
There is an entire appendix in the Integrated Water Supply Master Plan that addresses the current regulations and where we are within the region with respect to wastewater facilities, an inventory of them, and where that projection might take us.
regulatory-wise, are they talking about it in Tallahassee?
There's a potable reuse commission that is currently trying to get a framework developed to put in front of the regulators for decision.
Very good. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Thank you, sir.
Okay. All right, and that was for informational purposes only. Thank you, Terry. And agenda item number 4, Richard Anderson.
Good morning again, Mr. Chair. Richard Anderson of your staff. There we go. You just heard an update on the Integrated Regional Water Supply Plan. Item 4 is an update on the Water Quality Master Plan. I have with me today some folks that were part of the project team from Hazen and Sawyer. We have the project manager on his phone there, Drew Coleman. Sorry, Drew. Gas leak at your house. If you need to go, you can go. That's fine. We have the principal scientist, Stephanie Ishii, and Hazen Vice President Andre Diefenthaler. So thank you for coming. This is the first time you've had an update on this item, so I'm going to give you well, here's the agenda, first of all. This is what we're going to talk about. I'm going to give you a brief background on the project, since this is the first time you've heard about it, a quick overview of the scope, then I'm going to turn it over to the Hazen team, and they're going to share with you the major findings and summary on the project. So this is a component of our strategic plan, developing a region-wide water quality plan to optimize water quality of both our current and future sources is a core value that was shared in the strategic plan. It was identified as one of the specific initiatives during our workshop meetings with the authority staffs and your staffs after the strategic plan was approved back in 2017. Board approved this item back last year, over a year ago, October 2018. It was awarded to Hazen and Sawyer, and it was fully funded in the 2019 budget. It is intended to be a companion document to the Integrated Regional Water Supply Plan that you just heard about from Terry and her folks. Water quality in the region has to be just as important as supply. When you're considering adding supply, you have to look at what that does to the quality of the water that we're delivering to the customers. So this, again, is intended to be a companion document to look at, as we expand, how does it affect the water quality of both the source and the delivered water to the customers. Real quickly on the scope for Hazen, they had 5 major tasks. First, they did an extensive data collection effort from both the authority, customers, members, and our partners in Inglewood and Punta Gorda. So they did a massive amount of data collection that took up quite a bit of time doing that. They actually used that data then to assess the regional system water quality and evaluate the unique characteristics of the various supplies that we all deliver. Each of our supplies has a different source, different treatment, so there's unique differences to each of those waters that have to be looked at so that we can maintain consistent regional water quality. Next, they looked at regional water quality standards. Currently, the authority meets all drinking water standards, EPA, DEP, all standards totally met. They looked at options for the future. Are there specific characteristics that we need to keep an eye on and monitor that are specific to this region? And how would we do that as a add-on to the water treatment standards that we currently use today? Next, they performed a regulatory assessment, looking at the future regulations. How do things like the changes to the lead and copper rule affect how we do business? So they're going to address a little bit of that. And finally, they did a desktop review of potential treatment options that might be needed to meet future regs or to improve water quality in the future as we add new sources. So real quick on the schedule. Again, it was approved last October 18. We're here today, December 19, with a board update. The draft plan is due later this month. We expect that from them in the next couple of weeks. That'll go through a review period with authority staff and your professional staffs, and we'll bring back a final report to the board in April of 2020. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Stephanie Easy. She's going to cover some of the major findings of the project. Stephanie?
Thank you very much. Hello, good morning. We're really happy to be with you here today to discuss the major findings of the Water Quality Master Plan. And just to follow up on the previous presentation as well as Richard's sentiments, I just wanted to reiterate that the purpose of the Water Quality Master Plan is really to assess the performance of the treatment and the transmission facilities with respect to water quality related goals. And then the companion document, that Integrated Regional Water Supply Plan, looks at supplies and demands from a quantity perspective. So generally, water quality master plans are comprised of 4 major components, all of which are shown here. And for the authority's water quality master plan, we took a really specific approach to addressing each of these components such that the specific needs of the authority were met. So for the evaluation of source and finished water quality, a historical water quality data compilation was developed using data that was provided by the authority as well as by the customers, and it was compiled using business intelligence tools so that we could better identify and evaluate source water quality trends as well as finished water quality trends. A regulatory review was conducted such that we could compile a collection of finished water quality targets that span existing regulations, guidelines, and potential future anticipated finished water quality limits. And then all of those limits, were compared with the existing treatment barriers at the Peace River facility as part of a risk assessment. For the evaluation and optimization of operations, the focus was really on the corrosion control that's practiced throughout the region, as well as a review of potential frameworks for the implementation of regional water quality standards that Richard mentioned that are in excess of regulatory requirements. And then lastly, for the evaluation of treatment options, the focus was on potential enhancements with respect to improved total organic carbon, or TOC, removal at the Peace River facility. So with all of that said, let's get to the findings. So at the conclusion of the historical water quality data evaluation in combination with that regulatory review, the major finding was that the authority is compliant with all federal and state water quality requirements at the Peace River facility, as well as at points of connection. And then in addition to that, the authority certainly recognizes that compliance today is great, but wants to be prepared for potential regulatory changes in the future. And so in addition to the regulatory review that we conducted as part of the plan, the authority is already doing water quality sampling at the source and in finished water quality to be better prepared for potential regulatory changes in the future. And then lastly, that lead and copper rule, it is currently undergoing revisions. Draft revisions were just recently released. And so those revisions and the potential impacts to the authority and the customers really served as a driver for the corrosion control evaluation that was also included in this plan. So just as a reminder and a refresher for everyone, corrosion control is treatment or chemical addition that can be practiced in a treatment facility or in the distribution system, the ultimate goal of which is to minimize the corrosivity of that drinking water. And so what it does is it helps maintain the integrity of the distribution system as well as maintain finished water quality as it's traveling through the distribution system and through customer plumbing. And so when we looked at current conditions, a major finding of the plan was that there are various corrosion control strategies that are currently being practiced throughout the region by individual customers, and that all customers are currently in compliance with existing lead and copper requirements. But certainly we don't want to just focus on today, we want to look to the future as well, and we recognize that there are potential future changes that could impact the extent to which the current corrosion control strategies are acceptable or suitable. So just as an example, there are those potential regulatory changes that I mentioned with respect to the lead and copper rule, but there's also differences in terms of the sources that are contributing to the system and the demands that are pulling on the system, and thus what types of water are blending within the distribution system and how those corrosion control strategies are interacting. So just as an example, this map shown here was generated by HDR as part of that integrated regional water supply plan, and it shows one potential scenario for 2020. And all of those little dots represent a certain type of drinking water that's being distributed within the region. So just as an example, those green dots represent drinking water that's sourced from either the Peace River facility or from the Carlton treatment facility. And then as a comparison, those yellow dots that are in the middle of the map and toward the bottom of the map are a blend. So it's drinking water from Carlton, from Peace River, from other facilities coming together and blending and being distributed within that area of the system. So as we look to the future, the second map that's popping up here is another potential scenario that was generated by HDR for the year 2040. And so the main takeaway message from this comparison of the two maps is those yellow guys become much more prominent. And so that means that mixing zone, that area where we've got different types of water coming together and blending, is becoming a more dominant area within the regional distribution system. And so what this tells us is that potentially different corrosion control strategies are coming together and blending within the system. So you just want to be prepared for what that means from a water quality standpoint. So with these future conditions in mind, the Water Quality Master Plan included a comparison of the status quo approach, which is the practicing of individual corrosion control strategies throughout the regional system, as compared with this potential alternative of one regional uniform corrosion control approach. And so there are certainly benefits to both approaches. If we think about the status quo, definitely a low capital cost option because it's just continuing to do what's already being done in terms of those individual strategies. We know it has a successful track record because, as I mentioned before, all customers are in compliance with lead and copper regulations and requirements. And then lastly, because it is a practicing of individual strategies by individual customers, it allows for local optimization. Kind of on the flip side, when we think about that uniform regional approach, one benefit is that it eliminates those mixing zones. So we don't need to think about different strategies coming together within the distribution system because we'd all be practicing the same corrosion control strategy. It also lends itself to operational simplicity because it's one strategy throughout the region. We can learn from each other's successes and challenges. And then lastly, it allows for the development of uniform conditions from a corrosion standpoint throughout the system. So at the conclusion of that corrosion control evaluation, the major finding was that at this time, there are no changes that are required to the corrosion control strategies, meaning that the authority and its customers can continue to practice their current corrosion control strategies as evidenced by the success of the current conditions. But with that said, it's still important to monitor those lead and copper rule revisions as well as the water quality within those mixing zones to continue to be better prepared for those potential future conditions within the system. So now moving away from that corrosion control evaluation, Richard mentioned that we did also look at the potential for the implementation of regional water quality standards. So the current approach is that the authority meets all federal and state water quality requirements at the Peace River facility as well as at each individual point of connection. And that is certainly an option to maintain for the future where all regulatory requirements are being met. But a potential future alternative is that in addition to those regulatory water quality requirements, there could be additional regional water quality standards that are agreed upon between the authority and the customers that really speak to local conditions and site-specific priorities in terms of the water quality that's delivered. And so as part of this Water Quality Master Plan, we reviewed two common approaches for the implementation of regional water quality standards. One of those approaches being the development of an action response plan, and the other being a water supply contract. So if we start with the action response plan, what that is essentially a guidebook of water treatment action levels and responses and notification procedures that not just speaks to water quality that's required by regulation, but also water quality parameters that are the priority of the customers that are being served. And so it allows you to go beyond the regulatory requirements to make sure that you're meeting local conditions. Contrary to that, or kind of as an alternative to that, there's the water supply contract, which is, again, looking at prioritized water quality requirements, but it's less of a guidebook and more of just a contractual obligation to meet those water quality requirements. And so in the Water Quality Master Plan, there is a recommendation to continue to develop that action response plan for the authority to work with its customers to develop that action response plan, to get feedback in terms of what the priority water quality requirements would be in excess of regulatory requirements, and really to facilitate the communication that happens from a water quality standpoint. And so with that, I wanted to introduce Andre Diefenthaler, who's also from Hazen and Sawyer, and he's going to wrap up this conversation about the Water Quality Master Plan.
Thank you and good morning. Andre Diefenthaler with Hazen and Sawyer. So one of the things that we did look at was, is there a need for additional treatment at the facility to remove TOC? TOC is total organic carbon. It's a naturally occurring compound in the raw source water. And why is that important? Why did we focus on that? Well, there's several reasons. One is that it could affect the chemical demand, the chlorine that you introduce into your system for disinfection. It could increase that demand. Higher TOC levels could also increase the stability of that disinfection, which could also lead to maybe the need to flush more within your distribution system. So, being to conserve that water, it's important to maybe look at controlling TOC. It also could have an impact on taste and odor, and it also could have an impact on disinfection byproducts, which is regulated by the EPA, and which, if you look at the graph on your right, it gives you an example of how that could be impacted with disinfection byproducts. The left axis, which is the line represented by the orange, is TOC, and the right is THMs, which is one of the compounds, one of the disinfection byproducts that's regulated. And as you can see from this graph, this is your data in the finished water, that as TOC increases over time, so does the disinfection byproduct THM formation. So that's why it's important to look at TOC and why we focused on, is there a need to look at that a little bit closer as part of the study. The good news is that the authority does a great job managing TOC right now. This graph here on the right shows the variability of TOC in your source water. This is a 1 year data. If you look at the first part of this graph, from about maybe January timeframe to about April timeframe, it shows a low level of TOC, which is shown on the left axis. As the summer months, you get into summer months from June to September timeframe, there's a drastic increase in TOC. And this gives you an idea of how variable it can be in your source water. One of the significant benefits that the authority has is that the reservoir has a significant impact on damping those impacts. So this line here, which is in the aqua color, shows the impacted reservoir, bringing that variability down to a more consistent level, which helps with treatment. So that alone helps significantly with trying to control and manage the TOC levels. This next line here shows the finished water TOC now. So once that water then goes through additional treatment, the authority then further reduces level of TOC, and again, it's also very consistent. So right now, the authority is doing an excellent job with maintaining and managing the TOC levels in your distribution system. But going on to the customers. So the primary findings, as I just mentioned, the TOC removal right now is currently excellent. What we found is that there's no need right now to do additional removal at this time for TOC. But we have to look to the future. As Stephanie mentioned, we have to keep looking at the future and looking at changes down the road. So there are potential changes that could impact, or drivers that could impact the need to do additional TOC removal, such as operational changes within the system, or maybe distribution system challenges, such as loss or residual within your system that might be require us to look again at TOC. Source water quality changes as you look at different sources, as mentioned earlier, that could affect the need to do additional TOC removal, as well as regulatory changes. As the regulations get more stringent over time, there may be a need to relook at that. Fortunately, again, the authority has many options to look at if that is needed in the future. One could be looking at optimizing river withdrawals. Again, going back to that variability that I showed, it could be that instead of looking at taking water from a river source when your TOC levels are high, maybe we depend on the reservoir when it's more stable for a longer period of time. That allows you to minimize the TOC coming in. That's one strategy that could be used. The other strategy is, can we further optimize? The authority does a great job with treatment, but there are ways to further optimize that, and that's something that can be looked at if we have to tweak that level of removal for TOC. And then the final thing that we did look at is, if we did have to add additional treatment, what would it look like and how would it fit within the current system, such as granulated activated carbon is one example that can fit within your system, and we did look at that as a potential alternative. So you have several options that could be looked at if TOC becomes an issue in the future. So just to touch on the summary and next steps, So just to pull this all together of what we just mentioned, basically authority is meeting all required water quality regulations and goals. As I showed, the reservoir has significant benefit as far as helping not only provide supply, but also quality, and that's something we don't think of as much sometimes. But it does have a big impact on the quality that goes to your treatment facilities. The quality that goes to the customer is very consistent. It's very high quality water, and it does have a very low level of TOC. As Stephanie mentioned, the customers are currently meeting all the lead and copper requirements right now, but it's something that we have to continue monitoring. We also mentioned that there could be a benefit for regional water quality standards to be able to further improve and enhance the level of quality delivered to the different customers. And then finally, the main finding is that the water quality considerations are a critical component of future water supply planning efforts. So some of the next steps that we're recommending in the report is to continue collecting water quality. As Richard mentioned, we did an extensive review of existing water quality, and that information is very helpful to be able to continue to optimize how do we withdraw and make decisions from withdrawals for the source water, and also optimize levels of treatment to continue to provide high level of treatment and quality to the customers. We also recommend continuing to monitor regulatory updates, in particular the lead and copper rule, to see if we need to make any changes to recommendations at this point, and also some emerging contaminants that may be out there. We need to continue to monitor that to make sure we have appropriate treatment for that. We also need to continue to monitor the different drivers for TOC removal if there's change in the future, to make decisions on level of treatment. Obtaining consensus on water quality standards is another recommendation that we suggest moving forward as next steps. And then finally, we recommend to integrate water quality modeling in any future water supply planning. So with that, I'll open up to any questions that you may have, or if Richard wants to wrap up. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question on the dramatic difference between the TOC levels in the reservoir versus the raw water coming out of the river. Do you have any time relationship, as to how much time does that raw water need to sit in the reservoir before you start seeing those dramatic reductions?
I think it's like about a 6 month. Do you remember, Kevin or Stephanie, what that lag was? It's several months lag. I mean, that's why you kind of see that even though it peaks in summer,
Right.
It still takes advantage of that earlier supply that came in.
Is it pure settlement?
No, it's just the fact that you have a big buffer and you have a wide spot, so you're taking advantage of times when the TOC might be lower. When I showed you lower levels and you bring in higher levels, and it's just just more time to buffer and blend together. So it doesn't settle. TOC is a dissolved
It is dissolved, so, yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, but it shows the benefit of that reservoir
Yes.
from water quality perspective. Yes.
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you.
Sir.
Have a good day.
Okay, Terry, you're up again. Agenda item number 5.
I feel like we're just tag teaming this morning. So this is an informational item for the board. There's no action required. It's an update to our third Peace River Regional Reservoir number 3 planning. So as you're aware, the Peace River facility relies on capture and storage of a percentage of the flows that come down the Peace River during periods of seasonal high flows to meet our customers' demand year-round. There's been reliability modeling that has been done that has shown that by expanding the Peace River facility, we can realize an increase of about 15 million gallons per day of yield. So that project, that Peace River facility expansion project, is in our 2020 budget in our capital needs assessment. And the project is 3 different components that make up that full project, including increasing our river diversion structure up to 258 million gallons per day, adding 6 billion gallons of additional raw water storage, and increasing our treatment plant capacity by an additional 26 million gallons per day. So those components combined are the Peace River facility expansion project. There is also additional funding that has been identified in our 2020 fiscal year budget for the feasibility and siting of the new regional reservoir that's a component of that project. There's been previous planning efforts where this project has been identified, including the 2015 Integrated Regional Water Supply Plan, which was carried over into the district's regional water supply plan, as well as the recently issued water use permit that the authority received from the Water Management District, where the 258 million gallons per day was authorized in that water use permit to support this project. So it's been around for a long time. So why are we starting now? Why start the feasibility and planning of the regional reservoir project now? You heard in Mr. Messer's presentation earlier, we will need to be bringing on additional capacity in the region by 2030. It's 10 years out. We've got a great frame of reference in Reservoir 2 and how long it takes to develop a 6 billion gallon off-stream reservoir. From the feasibility and siting phase through bringing that facility online, it took about 7 years. Now, we need to know that the critical point of siting a reservoir and constructing a reservoir is identifying the wetland impacts and any impacts to floodplain areas. So in Res 2, we were able to contain all of the mitigation impacts in floodplain areas on the RB Griffin site. So it was all contained on property that we had control over. We don't have that luxury with Res 3. So to be able to identify how many wetland impacts we're going to have, we have got to identify that footprint on the RV Griffin site so that we can prepare to secure those mitigation credits ahead of time before we go forward with permitting. And that's that lag between the 7 years that it took for Res 2 to why we're looking at a little longer time to bring on Res 3. We've got to allow for that time to secure those mitigation credits. So just the overall project schedule, where we stand today. The water use permit, that first hurdle, we have already accomplished. We've got that in hand. So the Water Management District issued that permit earlier this year. We're now embarking on the siting and feasibility study. That should take about 18 months to finish, which by that time we should have an idea of those total mitigation credits needed for any impacts to wetlands. And then going through design, construction, and yes, we have to actually consider filling of 6 billion gallons, so that's about 2 years to take to fill that reservoir. We look to bring that online then by 2030, that 10-year time frame. So the SOQ, the authority has issued a statement of qualifications request that went out on November 6th last month with an anticipated submittal date. We're expecting those to come in this Friday, December 6th, and hoping to have a short listing and interviews to be able to come back to the board in January with a selected consultant to begin work on the feasibility and siting for that third reservoir. Ultimately, we would like to have a contract and that first work assignment back to the board in April so that we can begin the 2020 fiscal year funding of that project and move forward. I just wanted to note as well that the authority has submitted a cooperative funding request to the Water Management District to assist with the feasibility and siting in fiscal year 21. And we've also submitted a state appropriation request for the feasibility and siting study to the legislature. So there's your update. Do you have any questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Glad to entertain them.
Remember?
Yeah, it's not really a question, but I'd like to make a couple of comments on this one. This is very well timed, your summary to us. First of all, it's clear to us up here and to anyone who sits in the room how methodical this authority has been, our staff has been, our consultants out there have been in slowly but surely getting us to this point. Whether it's all the infrastructure that's been put in, whether it's the very impressive work that was done to get the SwiftMud permit last year, getting past any of the incremental hurdles that were thrown up. Doug, a great job there. And now we're at this point. And this doesn't happen overnight. And I've spent the last 35 years living as a consultant or as the person hiring consultants, and it's just a fantastic incremental job that we're doing. Now, I'm beside myself that you can't have this reservoir up and running next week, but I understand the timeline. And it's important to stress that timeline, because as much as I claim I know everything, I would not have come close to realizing how long it takes to fill a 6 billion gallon reservoir. I also want us to be very clear in our minds that this time we're going to have to buy mitigation credits, and we're on that path. That is not something that's being set aside. We'll worry about it when we get there. Every single incremental part of this is being dealt with all at once, and nothing will be left hanging. And I just think this is a wonderful thing, and I'm going to make a full presentation to my board. Always fearful of getting out ahead of them, because I'm just off and running. As one commissioner, I only get one vote here. I think it's full speed ahead on Reservoir 3. Thank you, Terry.
Okay. Commissioner?
Well, I echo those comments, sir. I think the organization's done a good job getting to this point. I like the plan as far as siting first, determining the geometry of the Res 3, and then going to work to figure out how we'll mitigate those impacts. It'll be interesting. It'll be an interesting process. I've had some experience in my past life working with wetland impacts, so we've got our work cut out for us. But good job. I think I'm good with you. Pedal to the metal. Let's get it done. Thank you.
Nothing else? Okay. That brings us to our general counsel's report. Mr. Manson?
It's a little public service announcement, because we had a chair who may have been a little overeager on the officers thing last year. I'm just kidding with you. When the policy for the board is when you do officers nominations, that then the general counsel would be the ones who will open the floor to the nominations. So that when we get to that point, then because the chair typically may be putting someone up, or may be putting someone up, to have that option open and clear, then I will then open the nominations. Then you all obviously do all the voting, and I don't vote. I just open the nominations and take the names.
Okay. All right. That's
And
wrap
nothing
you up.
further. No.
Man, that was quick for an attorney. All right. Executive Director's report.
Nothing new, other than it's been a terrific year. I think you've all know all the accomplishments that have been done, both by this board implementing the strategic plan, and certainly by the staff, by all the awards they win. So it's really a pleasure to be part of this, and certainly looking forward to next year. And certainly you all have a blessed Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
You too, sir.
Okay. Chairman's report. Policy provides that the chairman shall review and evaluate forms completed and submitted by each board member, and developed and appropriate recommendations which shall be presented for the consideration by the board. All board members' perform evaluations were favorable of the executive director's performance, and I have discussed this with Mr. Lehman, and recommend a 4% pay increase consistent with the increase for employees included in the fiscal year 2020 budget approved by the board. Budget approved by the board, increasing the annual salary from $172,200 to $179,088 effective October 1 of 2019. I open it up for discussion.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Move approval of your recommendation concerning Mr. Lehman.
All righty. Okay, we have a motion for approval and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay. Motion carries. And also, I'd like to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year coming up. And now I'm going to turn it over to Doug for just a minute.
Just the idea, real briefly, because I'm an attorney and so I have to say more, right? So this is a one-year term. The only two officers that we have are the chair and the vice chair. I'm going to be opening the floor to nominations. You can do the nomination either individually for a chair and then second for a vice chair, or if you want to put an officer slate up and put both a chair and a vice chair in your nomination, you're welcome to do so. Once the nominations are made, then we'll have a vote on the nominations in the order they were given.
Okay. Well,
The
Mr.
floor is now
Counsel.
open for nominations.
Mr. Manson, if I may. I'll nominate Commissioner Dougherty for chairman, and I'll nominate Commissioner Trace for vice chairman.
Are there any other nominations? The nominations are closed at this time. Would take a motion for the nominations to go forward.
Okay, so moved.
Second.
We have a little discussion.
No, there's no pay raise. There's no.
I figured that. First of all, it'd be an honor to serve as chair. You know, y'all know how much I appreciate this assignment, but I think it's understood that next Tuesday, the Charlotte County Board of County Commissioners will be deciding on committee assignments. There are at least 3 other commissioners in Charlotte County that want this seat. So we had a really detailed discussion last year, and based on that, this would be my last meeting. So, however, if depending on how this vote goes and how you ponder this, I will take that information back Tuesday, but it'll be up to the board. And I've appreciated this, but you may have somebody else sitting here in January. I just need to share that with you. It will not be my call. It will be the Board of County Commissioners' call. Thank you.
Well, under discussion, I kind of figured if we make you chairman, that your board would kind of have to honor that. Of course, that's just my simple little country way of thinking, but
Appreciate it, sir. You know,
that's
we'll see how it goes.
Would with that in consideration, if something were to change, would we be able to change these nominations at a later date?
Yes, in other words, your vote is for Commissioner Dougherty. If
Okay.
he is not available to serve, then you would have to have another vote, and your vice chair would serve as chair until you had that next vote.
Okay, all right. Well,
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Dougherty is always, it's not just that he always dressed, I've yet to see this fella without a suit and tie on. If he came swimming at my house, I'm afraid to jump in the pool with a suit and tie
That would
on.
not happen, sir.
I would echo what you just said. Imagine that none of us take these nominations lightly and know the dynamics of what may occur. But let this go forward with our hope that Commissioner Dougherty is sitting here with us at least another year.
Thank you, sir. One other comment, sir. Regardless of what happens next Tuesday in Murdoch, you will see me at least in the audience as I did for 4 years when Commissioner Constance was in this seat. So I will still be around.
okay.
If you're ready to vote?
Okay.
All in favor of the officer slate that was put forward in the motion, vote aye.
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 Any opposed? None opposed.
Okay. All right, let's see. Well, I guess I can hand the gavel over, but before
Yes.
I do, I just want to say I appreciate y'all giving me the opportunity to serve as chairman for this past year, and it's a pleasure. It's been a pleasure working with each and every one of you, and I serve on several other committees, and I don't want to put one above the other, but I am. This is probably my favorite committee that I serve on, just because of Pat, you and your staff, and everything is always handled perfectly. And anyway, I just appreciate that, and serving with a board that we can sit down here and discuss things, and whether we see eye to eye, we can go eat together when we're done or whatever, and be friends, kind of like attorneys do. Fight back and two in the courtroom, but then they're buddies when they walk outside. But anyway, I just thank y'all for the opportunity that y'all give me this year, and I've enjoyed it. And with that, I'm gonna
Just give
hand
it
it
to
over
me
to
here,
you.
yeah. Thank you, sir.
You can finish up.
Very good. Well, Commissioners, again, thank you very much. It'll be an honor. Hopefully, I will see you in January at the plant. We got routine status reports. Any comments there on that? Okay, we'll go to member comments. Anything additional? Mr. Langford.
Mr. Chairman, just wish everybody a happy holiday. And I've had the pleasure of serving on this board for 5 years now. Hope to serve my last 3. That's if they'll allow me to sit here, those folks that are south of us here. And I will say that of all the boards that I serve on, this is my favorite. Great staff, great leadership, great planning, and I just love to build stuff. So this is just perfect.
Just want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Drive safely.
I echo that.
No, I just gonna say I enjoy this board so much. If my bunch tries to take me off, y'all read about it in the paper because we're gonna fight.
Something may happen, huh?
Something may happen, yes, sir.
Okay, and my comments again, hope everybody has great holidays. If you're traveling, please travel safely. Enjoy your families. It's a precious time of the year. I guess I would ask, and I'll fill y'all in, no matter what, I'll fill y'all in January on some comments that took place at our commission meeting last week concerning some of the dialogue that went between one of my colleagues and one of yours relative to water quality, Peace River. I'm not going to take up time here today on that, but I think there's an opportunity for this board to help do some additional research. I'll get with Mr. Lehman and kind of be the voice, kind of be the depository for finding out the truth and getting data and things that will help water quality-wise with all the issues that are related to our supply in the Peace River. But I think that's one of the roles we can play, but I'll share with that at another time. We are now at public comments. Is there anyone wishing to address this board on any authority issue? If so, please step forward. Seeing nobody stepping forward, commissioners, our next authority meeting will be Friday. Mark that, Friday, January 31st, 2020 at 9:30 a.m. at the Peace River facility in the Water Quality Training Facility. No other business? Mr. Lehman? Mr. Manson?
No.
This meeting is adjourned.